Choose your own adventure books. You've probably read one of them, or at least you heard of them. They are books, but they provide readers with some choices after a chapter. I think I had 2 choose your own adventure books in my life, and they were fun, but one of the major problems was the constant switching from, for example, page 10 to 21, depending on the choice you made. Victoriana basically solves this problem, because now it's basically a choose your own adventure book, just in digital form. But with one problem out of the way, there are others that come with it. Before I start this review, I have to disclose that I received this game for free from the devs. This might have influenced my view of the game. I will try to be as impartial as possible, but I don't know if I would ever bought the game for myself. Anyways, for those who know me, they're probably aware of what is coming next. Menus, baby. Menus. Menu. 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 And there is no options. You can't even play this game in full screen mode, or at least I didn't find any method to change the window mode, and pressing Alt Enter doesn't do the job either. There could be an option to do it, but since there are no options in the starting menu, there is nothing I could do about it. The menu itself is pretty clean. You have the display on the title, Dr. Cyril Splutterworth, Victoria, Steampunk Text Adventure. Dr. Cyril Splutterworth is the nickname of the dev, by the way. With a start button on the left and a continue or reset button on the right. The buttons themselves resemble computer chess, which I appreciate since the story has characters connected to computer science. I like it when things are connected, but I might just be reading too much into it. Anyways, on the bottom left side of the screen we have a day-night mode button. Normally I would just mention it, but the day mode is really bright. I can really imagine how someone would play this game in day mode. On the other side we have a button that opens the page for the game developer's other titles, and I really wonder why not other indie games do this more often. I mentioned something called Medium Break in Early Access Investigation episode 5, which you should check out, by the way. In short, Medium Break refers to the concept of breaking the customer acquisition process by implementing 2 different mediums that are not directly connected to each other, and therefore decreasing the chance to acquire a customer. This button doesn't break the medium, it goes from the game to the Steam page and potentially to the customer buying other games. Alright, I would definitely add an options menu though, with the typical options like window mode and resolution, and since the game is mostly dialogue, I would say there should also be a dedicated font options, which is partially in the game but not in a menu. A font option would not only consist of font size but also font style, font color, maybe line spacing and text alignment as well. So once you start a new game, you are greeted by a chapter card that spells 6 Tin Lane. You press the next button and as expected text appears, and here we have our first flaw. Depending on how big your font is, you will see just a block of text or a block of text with the bottom half of the sentence cut off. The first time I saw this, I just had a block of text and I thought I had to press the big next button to continue the story. What you have to do is scroll down. The problem is there is no indication that you have to scroll down, neither is there a scroll bar or any on-screen hint. Should you scroll down, you will discover the second flaw. After every block of text, you have choices. Problem is, they appear from outside of the screen and react to your scrolling. The choices are also not directly under the block of text, they are slightly shifted to the left as well. This is of course a style choice, but if the block of text gets cut off at one place, the choices should also be cut off at the same place. Meaning that the block of text should not be somewhere outside of the screen, but in the same place as the block of text. Okay, so after the story tells you that you are at a warehouse, you should meet Dr. C. Splutterworth. And you get the choice of going to the harbor or open the warehouse door. You choose one and press next. First time I played, I did go into the warehouse. After some scene setting, I called for someone, which was a choice as well, and here we have our last UI problem. The next story part appears and tells me that nobody is responding. I get one choice of approaching the staircase. Problem is, I have to check the only choice and then press the next button. If there's only one choice, it's not a choice. I know it's only one extra click, but it would be better if the choice was either pre-checked so that I only have to press the next button, or if there was no choice and I only had to press the next button. Alright, after some world building, you get the first choice that will lead to 2 different outcomes. The first time I played, I chose to take a look at the bird instead of a portrait. The bird turns out to be the bird from the title screen, by the way. And while the choice of the portrait versus bird changed the playthrough, the next choice of touching the bird or replacing the sheets that were covering the bird doesn't matter. A small piece of text changes, but it doesn't lead you into different directions, which is fine because I don't think that every choice needs to change the direction of the story completely, but we will see later choices that should change the story but don't. Okay, once you move on with the bird, which is a sentient creature, you meet the dog, who is your mother's uncle, second cousin-in-law, thrice removed. You give yourself a name and title and confirm it. Next, you are presented with the choice of going to a laboratory or going to Africa. These choices will lead to the different storylines, but they do not exclude each other. Should you go to Africa first and return, you will be able to go to the lab, and should you go to the lab first, you will be able to go to Africa. From a gameplay perspective, this is a good thing, because you can go from one story to the other without having to restart the game. From a story perspective, it doesn't make much sense, since I would assume that while I'm in Africa, the lab storyline would happen either way. The first time I played, I did go down to the lab and ultimately reached a story where the town is attacked by a nightmarish squid monster. Or was it a monster whale? I don't know. Either way, you reach kind of a combat section, and it doesn't matter how stupid you behave, you will survive every time. And story-wise, I thought that I should die when I behave like a complete moron, don't follow any orders and actually want to die. The first time I played, I didn't want to die, and it entertained me really well actually, but retrospectively, by playing the game a second time and seeing that none of my choices changed the story whatsoever, it diminished my enjoyment. The next part of the story deals with the pursuit of the people that attack the lab. You fly with your Pegasus cycle and choose between pursuing the monster that attacked the city and the lab people. I chose the lab people and I didn't kill them, and surprise surprise, if you choose to kill them or not, it doesn't matter because the storyline ends here either way. If you shoot them out of the sky or not, or try to pursue them or not, the story is over and the dog gives you the chance to go home and end the game or go to Africa. The Africa storyline is pretty enjoyable, but it suffers from the same problems the other storylines suffer. To give context, I became a sergeant, committed genocide, and then died inside of a castle full of explosives. The second time I committed genocide, I committed more genocide, and then I went home. Yeah. I'm not a literary critic, but I felt engaged in the story during the whole playthrough. I wasn't bored, I was enjoying my read, at least for the first time. From a gameplay perspective, replaying the game is a little bit cumbersome. You can't choose chapters, neither do you have a graph that shows what choices lead to what end. If the developer wants to do this again, I would advise to work on the menus, the UI problems and chapter select, or even a graph with choices and outcomes. I'm sure some of the choices were made intentionally, therefore I brought the developer on to answer some questions. Let's start. Please tell the people who you are, what you do, and what Victoriana is.
Hey, hello everybody. My name is Stuart, but I go by the name Dr. Cyril Splutterworth, indie developer extraordinaire, and I'm very modest, as you can tell. And Victoriana is a text adventure game based on the style of the choose your own adventure games that used to come in the form of books, but I thought that I'd try and make one that was playable on the desktop. And Victoriana is inspired by some of the steampunk stories that I've read and enjoyed, like the Call of Cthulhu, for example. Cthulhu features in the story. I don't know, I was just getting into game development time when I started making it, and text adventures are a very easy format to introduce yourself to the game dev genre, so I thought I'd start with that.
Okay, I assumed Victoriana was the first entry, right? Like the first foray in the indie or the game development. That was your first project, basically.
And I've tried to develop a few more things, like some language learning applications with a few flashcard type of pictures. But yeah, it was good fun to make it. I'd definitely do another text adventure.
Okay. Because one of the things that I noticed was there's no, for example, no music and no effects or anything like that. And I would say a big advantage in comparison to a choose your own adventure book is that on PC you can make use of this medium. Did you just not think about it, or did you have time for that, or was this more like a technical question?
I think it was a bit of a technical consideration, because at the moment when I started the project, my expertise wasn't really at the level where I could add sounds and images in very quickly or very easily. And what I wanted to do was focus on just getting the story down and refining the narrative, making sure that it was like a good text adventure. And then I think that I put the sound and music sort of as a secondary consideration, and in the end, I just decided to leave it out.
Okay.
Let it be kind of true to the original format as much as possible.
Yeah, I myself, I did put some music on, and it was, I don't know, like some background music, and it was a little bit, I enjoyed it more when I started putting the music. I don't know why. It's basically it's just background music, but it's just like it adds something to it.
What music did you listen to, just out of curiosity?
It was more like some mechanical ambient noise, something like that, depending on the place. For example, when I was in the laboratory, I put some mechanical ambient music, and then in the desert, I put some Saharan beats. Very chill, nothing major. Yeah, depending on the story, basically. Yeah, I have seen many choose your adventure games on Steam, and I mentioned this in the review as well. I think I wouldn't have bought the game even though I enjoyed my stay. How did you market your game? Because I don't know, like there are so many games like this, and it's difficult to market this. And if you don't mind, I ask, how financially successful was it?
Well, as of this moment, it hasn't really had that many sales. I think in actual fact, it might even have had less than 20 sales. And my view is that compared to the other games at this price point, it doesn't really offer those features that you mentioned earlier. Like a lot of those other games that are around the $5 mark, they've got music, they've got sound, some even have got animation. So that might have been a bit of a mistake on my part in putting it in at that price point. But I think you can always go down, whereas if I put it at a lower price point and I tried to go up, you'd have a lot of backlash and a lot of people unhappy with it. So yeah. I don't know, I was a little bit ambitious, a bit over ambitious. Yeah, I think lesson learned. I'm still learning about the game dev industry and the Steam platform.
Yeah. Another thing that I noticed is that, well, the main gameplay is reading, right? But I guess not everyone likes that. And I think it could open up the room for more people. Have you thought about like a choose your own adventure audiobook version of the whole thing? Where it's basically the text scrolls and someone is reading for you?
That'd be good. I've never considered that. No, I haven't thought about it. I'm sure I'd have to find someone with a rather sinister voice or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, people on Fiverr probably, there's a lot of voice actors that you can buy. So for a reasonable amount of price. So I think it could work. It was I like reading, but it was like a thought. I'm like, maybe you can open up this genre to people that don't like reading.
That's true. That's a good idea.
Another thing that I noticed was the lack of options, and by that I don't mean that options in the story itself. I mean like window mode, resolution, well, sound there is none, but it's like this typical options you need for you to customize your experience on your desktop. Again, was this more like a stylistic choice or just restriction of the engine you were using?
It was, I think, a little bit of both. Probably more a restriction about the engine because I don't know, I thought that with the settings, you've got the text size that you can change small, medium, or large. And you've got a night mode as well, which I'm quite glad that I put that in. But it was a little bit of a restriction on the game engine because what I did was I made the game using a JavaScript plugin called Phaser. And with that, what I had to do to upload it to Steam was I had to wrap it in a Visual Studio project. And mixing the game user interface in Phaser with the what you call the .NET application user interface controls. I don't know, I'm sure that there's a way to do it, but there's no way that I'm smart enough at the moment to work that out. So yeah, I sort of kept the UI a bit minimal.
Yeah, I noticed that were sometimes something's missing, and I'm like, I kind of expect that from like that to be a standard.
Yeah, basically the UI side of things.
So I want to talk about the story itself. The story I think cut off in chapters, and you have like a little adventure every time. But what I notice is that some stories basically lead in two different directions. But some stories, it doesn't matter what you do, it will have always the same outcome. One of the things was when you're fighting the gigantic beast, it doesn't matter how stupid you behave, you will survive the encounter. And I didn't notice that at first.
True.
I didn't notice that the first time I played through, and I enjoyed it. It's like, oh, this is amazing. I was thinking about my choices. But retrospectively, it diminished my enjoyment because I noticed, you can do it whatever you want. It doesn't change the outcome.
You wanted to get squashed by the beast.
Yeah, basically,
You
yeah.
wanted it to eat you.
So what was
Yeah.
the thought behind making this branching story, or writing all this down? Because I can imagine it takes a lot of time to write it down and then get it back and write again, like second thing, and branch off into a completely different direction.
Yeah, I think you've got it right there. Instead of just writing one story, you almost have to write 3, 4, 5 parallel stories
Yeah.
that all could happen, but equally they couldn't. And that monster encounter was one of those moments where I just thought, well, you know what? If the players come this far, I'm just going to keep it pretty linear and let them play through no matter what they do, especially because it's almost at the end of that particular story branch. I didn't want them to play almost all the way through to the final encounter and then clap. They do the wrong thing and then they have to start all over again. So what I tried to do kind of from the gameplay perspective was to put the chances to get killed maybe as early as possible.
Yeah.
So if you have to go back and play through, at least you didn't have to play through a lot of game just to get back to where you were. That's kind of my rationale.
Exactly. Like when I played it first, I'm like, I'm enjoying this. I'm deeply immersed in the story. But when I played a second time for the review, because I want to try some of those things out, I'm like, I feel disappointed now that I find out that I can't die. Like all the retrospectively, all the tension has been released, basically. Yeah, but I think.
That sounds fun.
I think the good part about the whole thing, it's written, like how it's written. I could read it without getting bored or without getting I was, every time I read a new part of the story, it was like, oh, it's building up and building up and building up. And even the not the Easter egg, but like the side things, like when you go to the library and you read about Pepe, for example. It's like, oh, I know that, I see what you did there. And it's like everything, it has a sense. Of course, everything I talked about in the review is like, this is like superficial stuff that just belongs into a game, basically. But yeah, I liked it. I like it. All right. I think that was everything I want to ask. I don't have more. One question I always ask is to anyone is they have advice. If someone is trying to make a game right now, what advice would you give them?
If someone was trying to make a game or just generally get into game dev, I would actually suggest this text adventure format because it gives you a very, very good introduction into the very basics of whatever game engine you decide that you want to use. Like, I don't think that there's a game engine that exists that you couldn't make a very good text adventure game in. So I don't know, I'd really recommend it. I'm very glad that it was my first game because all I had to do was focus on making a good game that you could play through. I didn't have to worry about sprites, sound, animations, although perhaps maybe I should have, but it's a project you can start and you can finish and you can make it manageable. You're not going to start it and be working on it 3 years later. So yeah, text adventure, I recommend it.
Good.
As a good starting point for any game dev.
I never considered a text adventure to be your first game, but it sounds like, yeah, this could be one entry point for basically storytelling. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed the interview. I did.
Thank you, I did.
Do you have the chance to chill your stuff? Chill everything you have. Tell the people what's on your mind and just speak your mind. The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for listening to me and Carlos talking. I hope that you check out my game Victoriana and check out my developer profile on Steam. It's Dr. Cyril Splutterworth. There's a nice short catchy name that you can remember. Thank you for listening and have fun playing games and making games.
Alright, so what did I think about the game? I would say it's a solid first entry. The writing is definitely the strongest part of the game. Things like music and more art would be a welcome surprise, but as it is right now, the game doesn't use the full potential of the medium. On PC, you can do so much more with Choose Your Adventure stories. The limitations you have on paper are gone, but you also have to be careful not to create new ones, like the ones I mentioned in the review. Would I recommend the game? No. I would keep an eye on the developer, and if the next entry on the series does improve on almost everything I mentioned, I would say buy the next one. If you like a good read or like Choose Your Adventure stories in general, I would say sure, go for it. Otherwise, I cannot recommend it. Good. Thanks for watching. if you like the video or dislike it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't give a fuck. They literally don't care. It's just about all the engagement. I care though. I care though, and it's okay if you break my heart. It's okay. It's already broken. It's already broken. You broke it already. It's fine. It's fine. Also, subscribe, turn on notifications, follow me on Twitter, leave a comment telling me what I could improve and what indie games you want me to take a look next. Take care of yourselves and have a nice and wonderful and steampunky day.